Hello all, TW here, and welcome to another edition of TWK Reviews, where I take a look at games in my usual stream of conscious style that I hope you all enjoy. Today's subject is Final Fantasy VII Remake, a much anticipated title that people have been wanting for ages, and for me, this one more than lived up to my expectations. The response, however, was slightly mixed. Thankfully leaning more towards the positive side, people seem to enjoy the combats and the overall narrative that was taken from the original game. What's currently up for contention is the inclusion of the Arbiters of Fate, whom you'll run into as early as the game's second chapter. Their purpose is to keep the story as loyal to the original as possible, and this sort of meta style didn't go over well with everyone. I can definitely understand this, as most just wanted Final Fantasy VII, but in high definition. In recent interviews, the devs explained that they did this so that they can have deviations from the original game to keep players both old and new on their toes, and considering that this game ends with the team destroying said Fate Keepers and going off onto their own destiny, I'd say mission accomplished. The next two installments could handle the story in any number of ways, and I'm excited to see where it goes, but enough vagueness, let's get into the specifics of my favorite moments from Final Fantasy VII Remake. First off, the entirety of the opening bombing mission is a perfect introduction to the game. I still remember that Tuesday morning playing through it on release day and being absolutely blown away by the presentation. It should also be noted that I have played the original Final Fantasy VII multiple times over since I was a child, and thusly, I, per mayhaps, be a tad biased in seeing some of my favorite moments recreated in full 3D. Nevertheless, I must also give props to the part of the game we spend in Sector 7. Unlike the original where we're in and out in less than 30 minutes, you can spend several hours here talking to the residents, playing darts, and doing side quests. The utilization of side quests has to be a true highlight of the game, as it allows the area to be more fleshed out if you want to engage with them, but can also be skipped over if you're only interested in the main story. Me, I always do every side quest I can here, which should speak to their quality as well as their accessibility. The best feature of them is that once they're finished, you get the option to warp back to the quest giver, which is something I wish every role-playing game had, as it cuts down on backtracking by a really big significant amount. It must be noted that if you complete all the side quests of a given area, you'll be rewarded with some extra cutscenes, which, considering the quality of them, makes it worth the effort. I also love how the devs differentiated the sectors of 7 and 5. 7 has a really industrial look to it, whereas 5, the home of Aerith, is filled with plant life, which shows you that it's not about how many polygons you have, but how you use them. Yes, this game looks gorgeous, but also knows how to use its graphics to reach its fullest potential. For example, look at Cloud's model. They could have just made Cloud look like every other pretty boy and be done with it, but upon closer inspection, you can see that there's some wear and tear on his armor. Likewise, when Aerith is rescuing Marlene during the destruction of Sector 7, her clothes get dirtied right up. I also quite enjoy the open world style section right before we invaded Shinra HQ. It's here where we have access to Sector 5, 6, and Wall Market, as well as fast travel by way of chocobos. And thanks to the power of the PlayStation 5, the load times are pretty much non-existent, and this includes loading up a save file. We truly are living in the future, people. Getting back on track, this section is what gives me hope that the future open sections of the Remake trilogy will probably be handled rather well. One area that has mixed results for me are the minigames. As someone who loves themselves a good minigame or two, none of the ones here really lit the world on fire for me. The worst of which being the motorbike boss near the end of the game, which I was able to skip this time due to playing on New Game Plus. The squats and pull-up minigames could be challenging, but, they felt like a fair amount of challenge for me. That is outside the final pull-up difficulty, which literally took me years to beat. I am happy to have gotten that W on recording, though.
You're better than I thought.
Who'd have thought it'd be this close?
You can do better than that. Much better.
I couldn't have asked for a better opponent.
I will say though, Corneo Coliseum, that's some good stuff, especially with the inclusion of the original victory motions. That is just mwah, chef's kiss. One thing I'm not a fan of are the few sections that did admittingly feel a tad like padding. Those areas being getting to the second reactor, Sector 6's robot hands, and most infamously, Hojo's lab. You could have cut Hojo's lab right in half and I can almost guarantee you that nothing would have been lost in the translation. The only benefit of it is that it gives Red 13 something to do. That's basically it. Speaking of Red, I do like how they seem to be building towards a friendship with him and Barrett, not unlike Final Fantasy VII Mission Abridged. I mean, it isn't impossible that someone at Square is a fan of Team 4-Star, right? And on the topic of Barrett, he is such a sweet, wholesome dad, like even more so than the original game, which I thought was impossible. Every interaction he has with Marlene is just so precious and amazing. Barrett is officially in my Video Game Dad Hall of Fame alongside Kratos and Kazuma Kiryu. The other characters aren't too shabby either, with Tifa clearly keeping Cloud around due to knowing that something is off with him, even if she can't tell what. Then there's Aerith, who clearly knows more than she should, which can go right over players' head the first time they play through the game, but pay attention to every word she says during the main cutscenes, and you'll catch a few lines that have you going, okay, how the fuck do you know that? Another plus is the overall pacing of the game. It is very linear, but the town sections help break up the linearity rather well, and they're placed at perfect times to give the player a rest from the constant battling. Speaking of the combat, it's a pretty good mix of real-time and turn-based combat. This is thanks to the ATB gauge filling up automatically but even quicker as you deal damage to enemies. An ATB bar will allow you to use items, magic, special abilities, and summons.
Sorry, I know it's sudden.
The music is another fantastic quality in Final Fantasy VII Remake's favor, featuring both new tracks and re-orchestrations of ones from the original game. I'd say at least 75% of them are legit bangers. My favorite Remake classic songs are Under the Rotting Pizza, Bombing Mission, and of course, One Winged Angel. As for the new tracks, I quite enjoyed the electronic-based fight music and loved Stand Up, aka the musical number from the Honeybee Inn. In fact, the entire Honeybee Inn section is an absolute highlight for me, and I have no clue if it's only because I'm bi, but nevertheless, happy Pride Month, friendos! Hashtag Andrea is king. And if that's a bit too leftist for you, then you're not going to like the politics of Final Fantasy VII Remake. They correctly paint the mega corporation Shinra as absolutely evil. They control the media, the government, and by proxy the military, and have essentially conquered most of the world. With that in mind, it's no wonder why so many have a grudge against them, our main characters included. You can tell that these developers are not a fan of the anarcho-capitalist world that we find ourselves in, and both through the original game and this remake have found ways of voicing their frustrations. I could go on and on gushing about Final Fantasy VII Remake, but I'll leave things here for now. Thank you to the developers of Square for making such an amazing first entry, and I can only hope that part 2, which comes out next year, is as good as this one. For now, I love this, and don't worry, we'll be covering intermission soon enough, but first, there's a wrestling game that I've been waiting a long time for. Thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you have a perfect rest of your day, and please remember to like and subscribe. Bye-bye! Alright, time for a bonus. Let's talk about that new trailer. Holy hell, it looks really amazing. Chrono Trigger style team-up attacks in an open-ish looking environment, and of course, Bugenhagen, which means we'll be visiting Cosmo Canyon, which means beforehand we'll be heading to the Gold Saucer, which means Chocobo Racing! I can't wait! Oh, and how big of a game is it that they'll require 2 discs, probably an installation disc, on the PlayStation frickin' 5? These devs are not messing around.